itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Down came the goblin and took the spider out.
The Green Goblin is widely considered to be the greatest foe of Spider-Man and one of the greatest comic book villains of all time. He's an insane, unpredictable character who has been responsible for countless tragedies in Peter Parker's life. He terrorizes New York City with his arsenal of pumpkin bomb grenades and high-tech weaponry, all while riding on a bat-shaped goblin glider. With his Halloween-themed appearance, I've always considered him to be one of the most visually interesting characters in the comic book medium. In the 2002 Spider-Man film, directed by Sam Raimi, the Green Goblin is portrayed by the ever-brilliant Willem Dafoe. The character is in many ways an accurate depiction of the source material, but it also takes a few creative liberties as well, which I enjoy. I'll further expand upon them as we go, but even with a few minor flaws, Dafoe's Goblin is one of the most entertaining villain performances you'll see in the entire superhero film genre. He remains in my top 5, and a lot of fans hold this performance in high regard. It's that good. In Spider-Man, Norman Osborn is the father of Peter's best friend Harry and the CEO of Oscorp Industries. Oscorp is attempting to win a military contract with its experiments, looking into performance-enhancing chemicals. When they prove unsuccessful, though, and the military threatens to pull its funding, Norman tests the serum on himself, which increases his strength, but leaves him insane. After the board members of Oscorp vote to fire him and sell his company, Norman dons the identity of the Green Goblin and uses a glider the company had been working on to attack the World Unity Fair and assassinate the board members with a special pumpkin bomb. In the comics, the Green Goblin was a Halloween-themed villain who rode around on a mechanical broomstick, later changed to a bat-shaped glider, and used various gimmick weapons: magic sparkles, electrically charged toy frogs, mechanical bats, and of course, pumpkin bombs. He debuted in The Amazing Spider-Man number 14 and was popular among readers, but his identity wasn't revealed until issue 39. Accounts as to who it was intended to be have been a topic of speculation for years. Stan Lee originally wanted the Green Goblin to be a mythological demon housed inside a sarcophagus before his debut, but thankfully Steve Ditko changed him into a human character. Lee then wanted the Green Goblin to be someone close to Peter Parker, whereas Ditko wanted it to be a new character they hadn't introduced yet. Somewhere along the line, it was decided that he would be revealed as the father of Harry Osborn, named Norman, debuting in issue 37. Whether it was the idea of Lee or Ditko remains to be seen. Anyways, in issue 40, the origin of Norman Osborn's powers were revealed, coming from an experimental formula which gave him superhuman strength and intelligence. When he was creating it, though, it turned green and exploded in his face, giving him the aforementioned powers, but also turning him insane. His early motivations involved wanting to take over all the organized crime in New York. He was just thirsty for power. Spider-Man would get in his way countless times, though, and a bitter rivalry would develop between the two, reaching unspeakable heights, or depths, whichever makes more sense. In the 2002 film, Norman is forced to take action when his company turns his back on him, resulting in the murder of its board members at his hands. Once they are all killed, he switches focus to Spider-Man, who attempted to stop him at the World Unity Festival. He views Spider-Man as an equal of sorts, and wants the two of them to team up to cause chaos and destroy. Yeah, in all honesty, it's not explained as clearly as it should be, but whatever. He views Spider-Man's heroic crusade as fruitless, believing the city will turn on him regardless of what he does, which should give Spider-Man incentive in siding with Goblin. Of course, it doesn't, though.
I could squash you like a bug right now, but I'm offering you a choice. Join me. Imagine what we could accomplish together. What we could create.
Or we could destroy. Cause the deaths of countless innocents in selfish battle again and again and again until we're both dead. Is that what you want?
Think about it, hero!
Basically, the rest of the film has Spidey refuse Goblin's offer, which pisses off the villain and further ignites their conflict. It's all because Peter said no. Being that this is a movie, the rivalry doesn't get as much time to develop as it does in the comics for obvious reasons, but it still works because of the strong relationship it builds between Peter, Harry, and Norman. Osborn acts as a father figure to Peter at times, and seeing him go bad is emotionally devastating to Peter in the end. The time they do have together in this movie is well executed. I have no real complaints. If I were to nitpick though, despite the strong relationship between the characters, Goblin's motivations themselves are fairly basic if you really think about it, and are not as layered as they could be. Once again, he goes after Spider-Man because he just said no. That's all it really was. More stuff happens by the end of the film, of course, to keep things interesting, but the main reason he went after him in the first place was because Spider-Man rubbed him the wrong way. That's it. Despite the simplistic approach to his motivations compared to many other villains in the superhero film genre, it's not something you really think about while you're watching this film. Spider-Man from 2002 focuses on the rivalry between the hero and villain and the personal relationships and boundaries it breaks. That's where all your attention lies. And yeah, Green Goblin might be a bit basic compared to antagonists we see today, but the performance by Willem Dafoe more than makes up for it. He's a blast to watch and still remains one of the most entertaining villains I've ever seen on the big screen. There are moments where he downright chews the scenery and spits out some really campy dialogue. The CGI at times is really bad and fake looking, and the references to 9/11 were a bit too on the nose even for the time, but regardless, this Green Goblin is one of the best, and will always remain as such. In Spider-Man, Norman Osborn suffers from a dual identity, his more timid and repressed self, and an evil, darker side that has become the Goblin. In the comics, he was insane, so you could assume he had this problem as well, but he would also frequently lose his memory and then get it back, going in and out of the Goblin role. In the 1994 animated series, an actual dual identity was established, similar to the one in the film, where they talk to each other and consider their son Harry weak, the same type of stuff we saw in the film. That version of Goblin didn't appear until Season 3 though, after Hobgoblin, which was always weird to me, all because the Hobgoblin action figure came out first. A turning point in the 2002 film is when Green Goblin learns the true identity of his foe and kidnaps Mary Jane Watson. In the comics, Goblin had learned of Spidey's true identity too, and would confront his arch-nemesis. Though he was defeated, this idea would culminate in The Amazing Spider-Man number 121 from 1973, when someone close to Peter was going to die. Goblin kidnaps Peter's then-girlfriend, Gwen Stacy, and takes her to the George Washington Bridge. Spidey fights Goblin and tries to reach Gwen, but her body is thrown off the bridge. He tries to catch her with his webbing and believes he has saved her, but unfortunately she has died, and it was one of the biggest failures of Spider-Man's life. Gwen Stacy's death at the hands of the Green Goblin was one of the most influential moments in comic book history. Many comic book historians signify it as one of the major events which instigated the end of the Silver Age of comics and the start of the grittier Bronze Age. Stories were getting much more real and would never be the same moving forward. Anyways, in the 2002 Spider-Man film, Gwen Stacy is replaced with Mary Jane Watson, though she doesn't die and the hero manages to rescue her.
This is why only fools are heroes. Because you never know when some lunatic will come along with a sadistic choice.
Let die the woman you love? Or suffer the little children. Make your choice, Spider-Man, and see how a hero is rewarded.
Don't do it, Goblin! We are who we choose to be. Now choose!
The fight between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin in the film culminates in a warehouse. The battle is hard-hitting, and Spider-Man, infuriated by Goblin's attacks on his personal life throughout the film, switches up his fighting style and is far more brutal than before. After Spidey puts the beat down on his foe, the Goblin unmasks, revealing himself as Norman Osborn. Osborn distracts Peter long enough for his Goblin glider to rush in from behind, but Peter dodges it in time thanks to his spider sense, and Norman is impaled and dies. In the comics, The Amazing Spider-Man number 122, Spidey fights the Green Goblin in the warehouse and doesn't hold back due to Gwen's death. Goblin tries a similar move against the hero, but much like in the film, is impaled by his own glider and dies. Now, of course, no one in the comics really stays dead, but this emotional moment from the source material was brought to life beautifully in the 2002 film. It's become just as iconic.
Godspeed, Spider-Man. Oh.
Peter. Don't tell Harry.
I guess the last thing I want to talk about is the costume of the Green Goblin used in the film. It's been the topic of discussion by many fans ever since this movie was released. It consisted of 580 pieces and took 30 minutes to put on. Despite its lack of resemblance to its comic book version, I like it, and still do, even to this day. The armor look is really cool, and though the face is fixed, seeing as it's a helmet, Dafoe is still able to do a lot with it. I didn't mind. There was another mask designed for the movie that was used in screen tests that had much more movement in the face and could express a lot more emotion, but to my knowledge, it wasn't used because it might have scared children, and it makes sense. What do you guys think of Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin from the 2002 Spider-Man film? Is he still one of the best villains put to screen? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that subscribe button to be notified of all future content I release, and I will see each and every one of you in the next one. Take care.